Then here's one for you. You got to think about this one. Why should you never brush your teeth with your left hand? Because a toothbrush works better. All right, got a few laughs out of that one. So, all right, so let's take a look here at Genesis chapter 1. We're going to look at the first 19 verses here and look at some things about the kinds that are mentioned here. Okay, really just in the plant world, trying not to make it any kind of a biology lesson, because first I hate biology. I might have been a pharmacist in life had I not hated biology. I mean, as I was looking at the three choices there, that engineering, which I settled on, accounting seemed kind of neat, but then they seemed to be limited by where they could, credits on the right, debits on the left, and they got to stay within those lines. And then there was engineering. Yeah, credits on the right, debits on the left. Is that not what I said? Yeah. Okay. Did I say it backwards? I don't know. Anyway, I do it very little, so my checkbook's right. I know that. So I balance it. I balance it every month. So some people don't even use a checkbook register anymore. That's all kinds of fun there. But when it came to biology, it was just do not like all the classifications, all the different things that way, and have to. A lot of memorization goes on when you do biology. So I liked engineering. That's where I settled. So either way, but let's take a look here this morning at some of these things with just the things created here, and then let's take a look at some of the kinds, and then just do a little study on that this morning. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. So we see here in these first 5 verses, we have the earth being formed there, things being taken care of that way, the light being created, and day and night being created here. Now, interestingly enough, we get down to the 4th day before the sun is created, but there was a light here, and the light was there, the earth, the light, the day, and the night. Now, verses 6 through 8, and God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day." So we see here we have the firmament, the dividing of the waters, and heaven being created, verses 6 through 8. Now, verses 9 through 13, we have some more divisions, some more things being done. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place." That'll be important a little later in our study. "And let the dry land appear," and it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called he seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth." And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. And the evening and the morning were the third day. So verses 9 through 13 here we see dry land being created, which was called earth, and given that name there, earth. And then we see the seas being gathered together, and the seas being created there. We have vegetation, plants, and fruit trees mentioned here as all these things were brought forth, and the seed was put inside of them so that they would recreate after their kind. Now let's take a look at verses 14 through 19. "And God said, Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the 4th day." So as we see these things here, considering that the lights in the firmament of the heaven, the different stars and the different bodies that are seen up there, those things that reflect back, all those things were created in the heavens, in the firmament there. Then the greater light which ruled the day, the sun, which still out there burning today and burning nice and bright and nice and shiny today, and it still moves just in the track that God put it in. It's going right into its track the way it's supposed to. And then the lesser light being the moon that we see at night that reflects the sun's light, and we can see that reflection there. And then of course the stars in the heavens. So as we've read these first 19 verses here and considered the things that were made in these 4 days in the creation of this universe, let's pray now, and then we'll get on with the lesson here. So I just want to ask God to bless our time. Dear Lord, we are so thankful that you've given us another week of life to be back here together again as a church family, and on this Sunday, the day we to celebrate our risen Savior. Lord, we thank you for his being willing to come and to be that perfect sacrifice for us, Lord, that we can have salvation so full and so free. And Lord, as we gather together here today to consider your word, I pray that you would just be with this lesson this morning. I pray that you be with me, help me with the words I need to say, and Lord, to be a help to your people. And Lord, I pray for all those other classes that are going on throughout the other places on this property, Lord, that this day would be a day that we would show honor and glory to you, as we should every day. But Lord, as we as we get into your word here this morning, we just ask you bless the time. We thank you for it all. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we're seeing there in verses 6 through 8, we see the firmament, and as you consider that, there's probably a lot more to it there, but just because of the way the world was before the flood. But just look at that as the atmosphere that's put around this earth, and that's a very, very unique thing that even though a lot of scientists are looking and they think they found other places, or they think there's got to be other places in this universe, that there are places that have places that can sustain life, human life. This is the only one that we know of right now that has the correct nitrogen, oxygen, trace element, atmosphere with the right moisture, with the right ecology. All the stuff that goes on is right here on this planet to sustain this life that we live today. The fact that the earth is the right distance from the sun, does not get too close and burn up, does not get too far away that everything dies off. This is the one place where we know life has happened. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing to consider. And so we need to understand that firmament was put in place because that's what we needed in order to have life here the way we do. And God created it that way. A small speck in all of the universe. But God has life here. God put life on this planet. Verses 14 to 19, as we study that, the lights in the firmament of the heavens, separating day from night. The fact that those lights are up there, and we can look at that and we think of who was it? Was it Galileo who there was a time when everybody thought the sun revolved around the earth, and there was all kinds of problems from that. Whenever he pointed out, I think it was Galileo who pointed out that you can't have the sun revolving around the earth. It's the earth that revolves around the sun, and that was a heretical point he had at that point. They wanted to kill him for that. And so as they considered, though, how everything moved, and as he showed how everything moved, it was the sun that the earth revolved around, and he found other planets and other things that were there, the way the sky was set up. God put it there so we could see his handiwork. God put it there. He had it for signs and for seasons and for days and years we can track. And as I mentioned last time we were together talking about, just how the earth, as the earth rotates around the sun, it's not exactly 365 days. That we make a correction every 4 years that we call leap year. We add an extra day in there because it's a little, we have to make that up. And then if you know the rules on that, I stated those rules. I'm trying to educate a little bit here as we go along, but those rules too, it's every 4 years except for a year divisible by, no. Yeah, it's every 4 years except for a year that ends in, that's divisible by 400. So the year 2000, we did not have a leap year. Anybody remember that? We did not have a leap year in the year 2000. It probably just went right by you. You didn't think about it. And you think about those poor kids that are born on February 29th. And in that year, they didn't even have a February 29th to celebrate, you know. But that's the way they set it up because of it's trying to keep from having things on. I told that story. I remember from high school, the one teacher that was teaching on some of the things with the Gregorian calendar and the things that were set up at that point, and they came along, they figured they had all this, everything was moving on them, and they didn't understand why the stars weren't in the same place when they came around the year later. They didn't understand, well, they had missed it for a few years, and all these things happened, and so they came along and they took away the month of September, or something like that. I remember him telling the story, it was something like that, and he took that away, and people were rioting because they stole a month from their life. I'm like, okay, that was just a good lesson for me in mob mentality, you know. And yes.
Maybe I misunderstood you, but you said like the year 2000 did not have a
Correct.
February 29th.
Did not have a February 29th. Correct.
I think it's when you get to a new century, it has to be divisible not only by 4 but by 400. So 2000 did have a February 29th. I just checked it on my calendar.
Okay, so maybe it's
Next one will be 2000 and year 2000.
400.
2100, yeah, 2400. 2100 will not have one. 2200 and 2300 will not have one. 2400 will.
Okay. Thanks for correcting that for me, because I don't want to give misinformation to anybody.
If it's a new century, it has to be divisible by 400 also.
Okay, so there we go. Sorry, I had that point wrong. But you could come up at one point and you would have figured that out on your own, because you would have Googled it and said, Tom was wrong. So the stars are put there. They were looking at how things were not where they should be, and then all these things were happening that way, but God put those things there for signs, for seasons, for days, for years. The observations could be made, and man could understand, boy, this thing's working, and it's working the same way every year. We may not be able to put it into nice, neat little time frames, and we might have to make our adjustments and things that way, but it's working the same way every year. And so he put that there for them to see. And again, God used a most miraculous thing when the Savior was born, that a star appeared. And I just think that's amazing that I believe that's a star was put into place, and it was there to travel through the way it was supposed to, and it showed up and it did what it was supposed to, and then it's not there. So either way, there were for signs, for seasons. He's telling them this in Genesis chapter 1, that as they look to the heavens, you're going to see God. And that's what we need to be able to see today as well. And so we can infer here that with the land and the earth being created on day 3, as we saw from verses 9 to 13, I believe too it was a single landmass that was there. The scientists will call it Pangea, that all the earth was together there. And as the flood came and things were broken up, and because if you take all the pieces, they look like they kind of fit back together like a puzzle. And I truly believe that. Some people disagree with that idea, but that's the way I believe it. I believe it's all put together as one piece there, and it's consistent with the understanding of how the current continents there, like say, fit together as a puzzle, and that as it was talking about all the seas being gathered together in one place. That's kind of pointing to that same thing, that there wasn't earth dividing the seas in different places, that the seas were all together in one place. So as we look at verses back at 11 and 12, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth grass and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind. And God saw that it was good. So the expectation here being set forth that each plant will produce more plants just like itself through the seed that's put inside. Those seeds form as not like the things we've done to watermelons, where it's seedless watermelon. You know, the way God set it up is they all produce their own seed, and the seeds could be brought forth, and they could be taken and planted, and you'd get more of them. That's the way it would work. So this expectation is set forth here. I find it interesting with the grass and all of that, that if anybody, you know, most of the time with mine, I'm just happy if it's green. I don't care if it's grass or weeds or what it might be, as long as it's green. And then in the springtime, it always seems the dandelions pop up, right? We don't always like, boy, those seeds are very prolific. Of course, that's a point of the curse there, that the weeds came into the whole picture, and we get those dandelions in the yard, and I like to just leave them there, and then I tell myself I'm just feeding the honeybees. They're looking for something to eat here early in the spring, and you know what? It gets hot enough, it finally dies out. I don't have any dandelions in my yard anymore, but boy, some people are really into making sure their grass is green, making sure that the weeds don't grow, making sure there aren't any dandelions in there. And how much money do we spend every year trying to take care of that? Now, if you do like doing that, I'm with you. I love a green yard, but my dad always said, he said, "Boy, if you put fertilizer on it and do that, it's just going to grow, and then you're going to have to mow it." So, if anybody sees the Bermuda grass in the south, it's what Eric and Jenna have at their house. It's the grass that we had at our house in South Carolina. It's really great because it's it shoots up, and then it's more of a ground covering. It'll shoot out with little spikes going out, and on those are little grass leaves, and they go out so far, and then they dig into the ground, and then they come up with another one and go another way, and it'll just intertwine covering your yard. But because it's that type of grass, you almost never have to mow it. It doesn't hardly grow tall enough to ever really need to be mowed. But it's a very good grass for the south, because it'll grow in very harsh conditions when you come to the type of soil that it's put in. I'm amazed with where Eric and Jenna's house is there in North Carolina, that there's just red clay everywhere. I mean, that red clay mud is everywhere down there in the Raleigh area. And it's a very hard thing for it to grow in, but it'll grow in it, and it's very drought resistant. You know, with the south, you get rain that comes down, you know, once every so often, and it's usually a torrent of water that just floods everything. But that Bermuda grass continues to grow there. You're not going to put, Kentucky bluegrass down and be very successful down there. It's just not going to hold up. But either way, interesting to see here is the grass and the herbs and the fruit trees, all those things God put in place here, and it had the seed inside of it, so it would reproduce after its kind. But there were so many varieties that he had already put into this, and that's a big point of it here too. But he had that expectation that the plant will produce more plants just like itself through the seeds that are there. Now, if we jump to verse 16, I know I'm jumping around here a little bit, but we just want to hit some things here and kind of get you to think about some things this morning. In verse 16, "And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also." So as we consider the sun, we consider the sun, we consider the moon. The sun being, again, we're just as far away from the sun as we need to be. That roughly 93 million miles that we are from the sun is just the right distance to be from the sun and be able to sustain life on this planet. And that it also, it activates a lot of things going on with the plants. It makes them do what they're supposed to do. The plants take care of a lot of the pollution, and we create a lot of pollution. They take care of a lot of pollution. There's a lot of things go on that way. And then you have the moon as well, and then of course it's different. It's different phases and how we see it at night, and the full moon, when everything's so bright outside, you can just almost walk around like it's daylight. I mean, you've had those nice clear nights where you've had a nice full moon, and just how beautiful that is. The meteor. What's the famous meteor shower that's been going on here? Perseid, Perseid, I believe it is. But it's a meteor shower, and I guess in August sometime we're supposed to have really good showing of it. I've got some family members who kind of keep up with it and kind of go out and see it at night when it's out there. But I guess the moon's going to be a waxing moon. It's not, it's just like a couple days after a full moon, and so a new moon. So it's going to be, there'll be no moon to get in the way of seeing these meteor showers, and so that's a kind of a big thing going on there. But being able to see those meteor showers, being able to think of the stars that are up in the sky, we consider this thought here. We see the sun, we see the moon every day. We see the effects of it. We feel the heat from it. The Aesop's fable where the sun and the wind were having their discussion about the person who had their coat, and I bet I can get their coat off of them, and the wind blew and the wind blew, and the guy just pulled his coat tighter and tighter, and the sun said, let me try, and the sun comes out really nice and hot and shines on him, and he takes his coat off because he wants to get cool. We have stories like that. We have those things that go on to teach a lesson from the sun and things like that. But the fact is, you see the stars at night. You don't see them in the daytime. You see them at night. And you see them when there isn't the other, I'll say, light pollution, the moon or street lights or those kind of things. Fireworks going off makes it harder to see the stars in the sky. But as you look up and you see those stars in the sky and you think about how far away they are, you think about how many there are of them, that it was written down here in this verse 16, those last 5 words, he made the stars also. Almost just passed by that, don't we? But think about the idea there that there's a lot of detail went into that statement for God to make the stars also. If we would consider that that here we have billions of stars in our own galaxy, and then there are billions of galaxies, uncounted numbers of galaxies, and he made the stars also. That is just amazing. I mean, God has allowed man to have the wisdom and the knowledge. We've put satellites into probes into space, and they're been traveling for decades, and they haven't even gotten close to touching the edge. Are we just on the edge of our galaxy? I think with the one with Voyager when it went out, I think it's maybe out that far. The Hubble telescope, they try to reach into the deepest, darkest parts of space to see what's going on out there, and we're just barely touching it. But God put all this together, and he said, and he made the stars also. And he allowed those 5 words in there. You could sit and think on those 5 words for the next 5 years and not even touch everything that's there. It's an amazing statement. Because like I say, the sun and the moon are right here in our faces every day, right? The stars, okay, the stars are there too, but there are stars so far beyond where we can even see that that are there, and he made them. We'll never see them in this lifetime, but they're out there. He went ahead and put them out there, and just billions and uncounted numbers of stars that are out there. And so as he did that, he also took the plants, and he put the fruit trees and the grass and the herbs, all those things, he put those on this planet as well for our enjoyment. And there's a lot of varieties, a lot of things going on there. So now, number of people I know in here, you do your gardens, you have your gardens. And if you were to take a pack of pumpkin seeds and you went and plant your pumpkin seeds in your garden, next few weeks comes up, what do you expect to find in your garden? Pumpkins. Okay, very good. That was a very simple question to ask and a simple answer. What's that? Weeds. Oh, that's it. That's the curse. So that's there. So if you go out one day and you find that there's a cantaloupe growing, what is the conclusion you came to? What would be the conclusion you would come to? You had the wrong seeds, right? How many have happened that before? I mean, I know when we used to do gardening and growing up and everything, it was always fun to have corn wasn't so much a problem, but other types of seeds, you'd go and you'd drop the seeds in the hole, and the next thing you know, there'd be some other plant growing up around that one you had planted. And so anyway, if you come to that conclusion, that's a correct conclusion to come to, right? So you would say it must not have been a pumpkin seed, must have been a cantaloupe seed. Okay. So this conclusion you came to is a very simplistic idea of like how science works, okay? Because that's what we do. You have a conclusion based on the experience and based on what makes sense. I was planting pumpkins, so if it was a pumpkin seed, I'm going to get pumpkins. And if it's not a pumpkin, then it wasn't a pumpkin seed. Pretty simplistic, right? So it's a scientific conclusion you came to, but by golly, it meets up with biblical conclusion as well. Okay, the kinds are there, the varieties are there. So experiences tells us that the pumpkin seeds that they don't produce cantaloupe. Just easy enough to have that. All right, so let's take a look at verse 12. And the earth brought forth grass, and herb yielding seed after his kind, and the tree yielding fruit, whose seed was in itself after his kind, and God saw that it was good. So as we see here, the grass, the herb, the fruit tree, those things that had the seed within itself, and how those things are grown. These fruits, these probably fit into the category here of plants. I mean, you figure as scientists have put together different things, we could consider these are all the plants. They're not trees. We're not talking about in the fruits we're talking about in this verse. We're not talking about trees. Okay, so they're not trees, and these plants yield seed after their kind. So pumpkin seeds will always produce pumpkins, since God designed the plants to produce seeds after their kind. The description that's here indicates there are distinct kinds of plants created. Kinds of grass, kinds of herbs, kinds of trees. And so we classify different kinds of plants into groups based on their similarities. So as man has done the same thing to try to really match up what the Bible is teaching here, that they put that together by similarities. They'll put different things together. And one of the important characteristics is the fertility of plants with one another. So if a plant can be, if they're similar in how they can do and they can go together, and you know, I see that, you know, you think about Solomon with what he did with Ecclesiastes. I mean, there was a lot of things done with animal husbandry and plants, and he just went through all of these things and finding different ways what will go together, what won't go together. You know, a lot of knowledge from that type of work there. So one of the characteristics, will they go together with one another, and then they put them together to consider that way. So there are varieties of cantaloupes and even hybrids of various melons. Anybody have a special one they like? Is there a hybrid melon you know of that you really like, or is they've not really been around? I don't like fruit, so it doesn't really fit with me very well. So, but anyway, just wanted to ask that question. I know a lot of people like different things. Suzanne always got into when it came to the like Welch's, not the grape juice, but the different fruit juices. They had one for the longest time. They had a cran blueberry, and she really liked that. And I have been to the store multiple times looking. I would try to find it and get it for her, and they quit making it. I don't know if it just didn't sell or if it was just too hard to put cranberry and blueberry in the same juice there. But either way, they, you know, so you get the juices that have the different flavors put together there. But either way, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about actually putting two fruits together and coming up with another fruit there that is a hybrid of some kind. But you take like how these different things can be done, different varieties, different things. Take apples, Granny Smith and Fuji's, and all the different apples are there, and how they'll hybridize those together. Come up with another type of apple. But if you take a melon and you take a coconut and you try to put them together, you're not going to get anything. Okay, they just won't go together that way because they're different kinds. Okay, so I know it's a long way to go to get to that statement, but just bear with me there. So creationists, they use fertility as one of the main ways to identify the groups of biblical kinds. This is something known as baraminology. Okay, and it's from a derivation of two words that are Hebrew, bara and min, and so the bara to create and min kind. Okay, so the creationists use this way to identify the groups of the biblical kinds. So let's consider wheat. So that's another good one out there. I've got to share this with you. I've told my dad this, and he keeps, and I may have shared this with you before. Who knows the statement, need to put your nose to the grindstone? Okay? And who, like me, before I learned this many years ago, who, like me, thought that was like, boy, you got to work hard. It's what you think about, right? Did you know the term actually comes from the milling stone? And if the mill runs and the mill grinds the flour, grinds the grain too hard, too much, it starts to burn the wheat or the flour or the grain. So keeping your nose to the grindstone is not a hard physical work. It's a smelling for the burning. So it's a thinking thing. You got to know, I'm burning this, so I've got to stop. I've got to slow it down. I've got to stop the process. So I always thought about it, like, because I always thought, I put my nose to the grindstone. I'm like, well, wouldn't that grind your nose off? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. But then I learned that a long time ago. So I'll say that to my dad, and Monday morning, probably tomorrow, he'll make mention when I call him on the way into work. He's, well, time to put your nose back to the grindstone. I said, yeah, I'm going to go think with my brain, not so much my back, you know. So it's what engineers get to do sometimes. Okay, so let's consider wheat and what other plants might be in the same kind. This is a tough one to ask, but what other, you know, I have the answers up here. It makes it easy for me. So what other things might be in the realm of wheat? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Oats. Okay. What'd you say? Corn. I think, but I thought maybe not. I don't have that on my list, but I'll accept it as a good answer because you actually participated. You can grind corn, right? I mean, that's the way we think about it. But I'm not sure. Is it it might be more in the fruit. I don't know because it's so sweet. It's got so much sugar. Anyway, whatever. I'll accept it as an answer because you did speak out. Oats, rye, barley. What's that? Hops, probably, yeah. Oh boy, we're headed down the wrong path there. I mentioned barley, I guess. So I guess that'll be on me. So, all right. So other grains that might even include the grasses that are in our lawns. Okay, so a lot of those are that way. And there might be many varieties originally created within the grass kind. So again, as you see what the you know, we know the scientists have worked a lot on all this grass and trying to create the perfect grass. And you know, you can go if you just need a bare spot patch trying to get things held in place. You can get the rye, and it'll shoot up really fast, but it'll die out. You know, it dies out quickly when it hits drought. And as I mentioned, the Bermuda grass, and people want to have the Kentucky bluegrass and all the effort it takes to keep that going. But there's all these different. There are all these, I believe, are all these different grasses. They're all there to begin with. It just, you know, God gave man dominion over this earth, and don't let anybody tell you differently. He gave us dominion over this earth. That's what the Bible teaches as well. And so many people are backing away from that idea. They're backing away to where the problem with this earth. That's the way they tend to look at mankind. So, but there's all these different varieties originally created within the grass kind. So if we were to take a look, plums, cherries, peaches, apricots, almonds, nectarines, they're all related in that they're the genus Prunus. Okay, so those are all related in there together. And I'm going somewhere with this. Think about with that, you think about like basic groups: onions, garlic, shallots. Then you have all the different varieties of tomatoes, the different varieties of peppers, all those things that are there. There's these groups that are there. You have how these are grouped together, how those are grouped together. You have all that going on. And so as you consider the basic groups of the onions, garlic, shallots, the tomatoes, the peppers, all those things, probably pretty close to the biblical kinds. Okay, what the Bible's point to here is the biblical kinds. So as the evolutionists come about with the teaching, the way they look at things, they tend to look at things as being like a tree of life. Okay, not the tree of life, but they tend to look at the life being from a tree analogy. It starts with a trunk, and it goes up and it branches out into many branches. So these things are coming up, and then they're becoming multiple other things. And the way the biblical view is that you're really more starting with you're starting more with an orchard. I would like to say more, you're really starting with a garden, right? I think everything was right there enclosed in the Garden of Eden, but there's this idea of these kinds, and these things can grow and they work together. Like we said, these items can be hybridized together. You can work these things together, but this tree will not populate with this tree. It doesn't work that way. So God put it together. He set up the categories. He made it so that if it's something that's able to be fertile with something else, it will work together. If it wasn't, it won't. And man has learned from the plant husbandry, animal husbandry. We could talk about that in the animal realm, and we'll get into that eventually. Into talking about the animals, days 5 and 6 for creation. We'll talk about that probably next time. But the fact is that all those things are there, and the evolutionists like to look at it as like this tree. And again, the biblical view is more of like, say, an orchard or a garden, and you have the trees and they all work together. The ones that work together will, and the ones that won't. And the biblical view is a very good scientific view from that standpoint. If you follow true science and the biblical view, you will come to this conclusion. That's basically the way things are summed up here to consider. So it's really quite neat, and really quite something to consider. Again, just what this earth is, and what the way it was laid out and the way it works together. Again, a friend of mine in South Carolina, one of his comments, he worked at the Savannah River site, the bomb plant in Georgia, and his comment, it always scared me with, he said, the solution to pollution is dilution. And the earth works to clean itself. The whole river system, we're dumping into the sea filters, cleans, it gets picked up by the sun, evaporating the water, goes in the clouds, comes back down as clean water. And then the whole cycle starts over again. And it's just amazing how God has that set up so that we little specks can live on this earth and honor and glorify Him. There's no evidence of anywhere else in the whole universe. And He made the stars also. And they're all out there, and we are most privileged that God has chosen us on this little rock to live and to honor and glorify Him. It's amazing. It really is. All right. Thank you for your